And when I say I feel like an Indian, I feel like specific Cleveland Indians. My knees feel just like Nick Swisher's knees. My shoulder feels just like Mike Tomlin's shoulder. And just like Zach Walters, I think my oblique would be strained if I could actually find an oblique somewhere. I know there's one in there somewhere. So as you probably have heard, the Indians have made a few changes to the roster this year, and we're going to get details on that from our two experts, who I will let cool for a while because I just love having this power. But we'll be hearing some about the changes there. There's also been changes at Progressive Field. If you saw today's copy of the Plain Dealer and online on cleveland.com, I think it posted yesterday, Terry-Pluto gave his review of the changes at Progressive Field. What they're doing, apparently, is trying to make experiences for younger fans. So when they go to the game, they have an experience, and then the game's going on too, I guess. We've been around for a while. I was at the 95 and 97 seasons. I got to cover those. The World Series is an experience. So we get that. I think they're going to get that stuff covered. The big draw at the ballpark now is the new two-story sports bar. It's called The Corner. You're here for inside information. So the reason they call it The Corner is because Tom Hamilton always says at the beginning of every game, from the corner of Ontario and Carnegie, or Carnegie and Ontario, whatever. Sometimes he switches it around. But that's why they call it The Corner Bar. It's very impressive. But it's so impressive, it beat out other great ideas, this bar.
I knew that was coming.
It did beat out other terrific ideas.
And what would those ideas be?
You know, I'm glad you asked, Terry. Really serendipitous timing.
I'm just here to help.
The Chris Perez Dog Park was one of the ideas. Seriously, it was so fun. The dogs could run and play or just mellow out. They took care of all of the dog's needs. You could even get your packages delivered there.
The dog wants you to know that was a bad rap.
They would sign for the mail. There's also going to be a Mike Hargrove incredibly slow roasted rotisserie chicken.
I like that.
Took them forever to fill a single order in testing. They might fire that up during rain delays, I hear.
Yeah. Oh, there you go.
And then finally, this idea I really liked a lot. It didn't work in beta testing, though. It was the self-serve beverage station, which had the Albert Bell beer can dispenser. 4 people were hospitalized. All right, I see you're treating my jokes now as background noise, the way millennials will do at the corner bar when the game is going on. And by the way, sir, that is an incredible Corey Kluber game face impression. Thank you very much for that. Appreciate that. So we're going to turn it over now to the real experts here. And as I mentioned, it's a dwindling number. Let me explain that. I don't know why, but Dennis Maniloff begged off at the last minute. This is the kind of thing Dennis does sometimes. Sometimes right in the middle of the program, you'll see him get up and just leave. But Dennis couldn't make it, and I'm sorry for that because he's really a knowledgeable guy, and we would have had a lot of fun with him. And then Zach Meisel couldn't make it either because he took an earlier flight home from the Houston series than Paul-Hoynes. Hoynes is here. He got here at 3 a.m. Zach is still in Dallas. That is youth for you.
Yeah.
You've made that trip like 7 million times, Paul? So I do have these two experts with us now, though, and let me tell you who's here. A man who just revealed to readers that he's about to turn 60 years old, which should qualify him for Jason Giambi's old spot in the dugout.
I love it.
Plain Dealer columnist Terry-Pluto is with us. And, of course, we have Hoynesy, Paul Hoynes, the longtime Indians beat writer for the Plain Dealer, now the Northeast Ohio Media Group. He's been on the beat how many years, Paul?
Too long.
Too long.
Paul, what was it like when Cy Young pitched his first game?
Do you have his curve working? If you remember last year when we started the program, Paul was a little bit late because he went out to his car and he was writing about the Kipnis signing. I just remembered this from the table over here. And the guys over there remembered that the best line last year will probably be the best line this year, too.
No.
Paul said he hadn't spent that much
that much time in the backseat of a car since I was a senior in high school.
Guys, it goes all downhill from here. It really does.
It does.
It's so bad we're bringing back last year's lines. I'll tell you what, we have an open seat over there, though, so why don't we start off by adding another panelist. Brian Peterson, you over there? Come on up. Take a seat.
All right.
Let's have a hand for Brian Peterson. Good to see you, Brian.
Hey, Paul, you know what this shows? that we could be replaced by a 9-year-old.
I knew that a long time ago.
I'm 12.
He's 12.
Oh! You gave me that information.
It's Zach Meisel that's 9 years old. So we're going to start with our first question from our expert panel for you, Brian. So you're going to have to step up a little bit to that microphone or pull it down a little bit for you.
There we go.
Brian, all right, let's hear it. So we have one loss this year. How are the Indians going to do? Where are they going to finish? And who is going to be the star of the season?
I think Corey Kluber will be the star of the season, mostly because he had a shutout last year. And I think we're going to do pretty good. I think we're going to at least get to the final round of the playoffs. And
That is a very Cleveland thing to say. We're going to almost win it all. I love it. I totally love it. So Corey Kluber's your guy, huh? How many other people have been won over by the Cy Young Award winner and think this guy is not a fluke? This is going to be, we signed him for 25 years or something like that?
Long time.
All right, Brian, thanks so much for coming up and giving us your insights. You can ask a question a little later. Let's hear it for Brian Peterson. All right, let's get started with the question for you guys. So Paul, Sports Illustrated cover, regional, so it might not be the jinx that when we saw Corey Snyder on the cover, but tell me a little bit about what the national media is saying about the Indians and how does that jibe with you guys who have been with them day in and day out in spring training?
Yeah, I have so much Cleveland in me. When I saw Corey Kluber and Michael Brantley on the cover of Sports Illustrated, I broke into a cold sweat. That's too much trauma from 1987. So,
Paul, before I go on that, could you believe Paul Dolan has a friend, because in the story I did, that suggested they should bring Carter and Snyder back for opening day to throw out the first balls?
that's too much.
And to Dolan's credit, he goes, "Are you nuts?"
No, I think the national media really likes the Indians, probably more so than the local media. At least from my perspective, from the guys that came to in Goodyear, the national writers, they really they like the pitching staff. They keep saying they're a below radar ball club, kind of a team that kind of a stealth jet fighter kind of team that'll sneak up on them. So we'll see. It's going to be interesting. I think I like their pitching. But I worry. I've got some concerns about the offense. But other than that, I think they're going to be a solid ball club.
Well, on those lines, Buster Olney from ESPN, in fact, Paul, you were there, but you were paying no attention to this conversation. This is in spring training. And Buster's arguing me into the Indians winning at least 90 games or more. He picked them, I think, to win 90, win the Central Division. And I'm like, which is I ended up at 87. And it oftentimes, in the past when I've dealt with people from the national media, I'm like, you guys pay absolutely no attention to Cleveland teams at all. So it was a strange change for me. Actually, I was at like 92 wins, and then Floyd got hurt, and then I saw Salazar pitch. How good was that?
That was not good. I don't know what Danny's doing.
Yeah, and seriously, that was my problem, because suddenly you're down to like 5 starters and that.
It's interesting you should mention Salazar because there are a lot of folks, Conrad here is in the audience, was a big fan of Trevor Bauers, and last year and earlier in the season and in the spring training part of the season, you're not sure if that guy's going to go great or sort of be inconsistent. I thought Danny Salazar was the sure thing, and Trevor Bauer was the who knows, and suddenly Salazar just lost the feel.
Well, Salazar's got to start building drones in his basement. just like Bauer, and then he'll be okay. This will be start flying him around the ballpark, and everything will be settled.
Well, the other thing, Paul, I wish Salazar's arm was half as strong as Bauer's.
Yeah, the thing is, he was throwing hard in spring training. Mickey Callaway, the pitching coach, said Danny Salazar was up to like 94, 95, 96 in spring training, which he wasn't throwing that hard last April. In a comparison. But he just didn't know where it was going, and that's a problem with for a pitcher.
Well, actually, and where it was going was down the middle. That was the other difficult part for him. I mean, Bauer, to me, is just fascinating because, like, he thinks 112 pitches is still warming up, right? I mean, how was he when he got taken out of the game? What did he?
He was, he was fine. This is a guy that he struck out 26 guys in spring training, walked one in about 28 innings, and the first 9 guys he faced yesterday, he walks 5 and strikes out 4. What do you do with a guy like that? He's like, he's a little unpredictable, but like Terry said, he's got a great arm. All he does is, like, he was telling me about his spring training routine or his off-season routine. This guy goes and throws for 4 hours. How do you do that without your arm falling?
Bob Feller says that's how you do it.
Yeah, he did that with both arms. 8 hours total for Feller.
He told us, like, the first week of games in spring training, when the starting pitchers go 2 or 3 innings, he goes, "I'm ready to go 9 right now." I don't know, and Terry Francona said, "I wouldn't like to see those 9 innings." What they look like, but he probably could.
So let's talk about the offense a little bit. And then, by the way, we're going to open up the questions to you guys because that's what you came to have your questions answered. Mine are absolutely stupid, and yours are going to be great, so don't worry about that. By the way, if you have a program, one of these Talkin' Tribe programs, take a look on the back of that, and this is kind of like a little bit of a Hunger Games war. If you have the red dot on it, you get to have that hat. If you're stronger than that person, you get to have that hat. All right, let's
Nothing.
let's ask about the and you got to wear it for the entire program.
Oh, we got one.
All right, guys. Hey, let's ask about the
He
offense.
got a red dot. What does he
There's
get?
a hat on the table. He gets the hat.
The hat.
All right.
Oh, there we go.
Let's ask a little bit about the offense. It's a little bit different this year. We got in the middle of the lineup Brandon Moss. How do you get a guy like that for what we gave up?
Well, after watching him the first 3 games of the season, I think you got a pretty good. No, I'm just kidding. But no, I think he was hurt. Obviously, he's coming off of right hip surgery. He had a great spring, hit 5 home runs in spring training. Didn't do too well against Houston, but I think he was swinging real hard. But and Oakland, the team the Indians got him from, they're rebuilding as they usually do every 2 years. So Billy Beane gets those guys, and if you reach a certain age, you're gone. And so they were able to get him for a minor league second baseman, and it looks like a pretty good acquisition.
I talked to Bob Melvin, he's the A's manager, and he basically told me all this, how they love Moss, and he goes, sometimes now Cleveland fans should understand this. When guys now he's 2 years away from free agency, you just say, well, it's a budget thing, and you just send them off for prospects and hope for the best, and that's kind of how they dealt with it. I think they felt between the hip, and we don't want to pay him, and they signed Billy Butler, and that's how they do it in Oakland. Oakland, too, because, Paul, you know this, nobody covers the Oakland A's. I mean, they're like this team operating here in the shadow of the Giants. They can make the most outrageous trades, and, you might upset 3 fans, but they just don't, seriously, they don't, all the talk shows, everything out there is all around the Giants, and it gives them, they could try experimental trades, they could do whatever they want. I mean, here, can you imagine if the Indians traded a guy who had 76 homers over the last 3 years, 2 years away from free agency for a double-A second baseman who had 250 and a broken hand? That's what, now Joey Wendell may end up being pretty good, but that was Joey Wendell who they gave up.
So what does it do to the lineup then now to have this? It's a right-handed bat, right? Or is it
No, he's a
a
left-handed
left-handed
hitter.
bat? Okay, I'm sorry. Of course he's a left-handed bat. They're all left-handed bats.
But at least Carlos Santana has some protection behind him. And if Moss hits 5th, then Carlos is 4th, and Brantley, is 3rd. So, you're protecting Santana there that way. And Moss, like Terry said, he's hit a bunch of home runs in a tough ballpark at the Oakland Coliseum the last 3 years. So, he should do well as long as he stays healthy.
Speaking about staying healthy, what about Brantley?
He was supposed to get his back checked out today. I would imagine he's getting an MRI. This is a back, right now they keep saying that structurally he's sound, and I don't know, that always concerns me. But the first day he came to spring training, he had a stiff back. So I'm not sure exactly what's going on, and they gave him a week off during camp to get it, to try to really kind of work at it and to to get it, so it wouldn't be a problem during the regular season, but he's missed 2 of the first 3 games here, so I'm not sure what we'll find out more today.
He came back, like I was down there for the last 7 or 8 days. He came back and got a whole bunch of hits. He looked fine. But one of the things, and I mentioned that in my column this morning, this guy's averaged 150 games over the last 3 years played. Played 156 last year. So usually, he kind of drags it out there. So I'm with Paul. I don't like pitchers who have, quote, general soreness in their arms. And Paul, you're very structurally sound.
God. That's what my wife says, too.
Wow. Especially after the back seat for about 10 minutes.
I don't know.
Look, if you got in from Houston at 3 o'clock, what would you better take us, Michael. We're dying over here.
Wow. I am going to say nothing and just let this continue, please. Guys, you come here to ask your questions, and we really, by the way, really do appreciate you being here. We know you're media insiders now. After this, you can go home with Paul and find out what happens behind closed doors if you want, I guess. But right now, what you get for being an insider is to be able to ask your questions. So there's been a man who's raised his hand before we even sat down. I'm going to start with him. And then feel free to just raise your hand, get my attention. We'll get a lot of questions in this way. Sir, in the back, I'd like it if you could you stand up and just really project? Be loud.
Let's assume Francisco Lindor is brought up between now and Memorial Day. Does that move Jose Ramirez to third and Chisenhall dealt or moved up?
Let me ask you first, is this wishful thinking on your behalf? Just a question, okay. Paul?
I would think.
By the way, I just want to quickly rephrase that if you're watching on the internet and weren't able to hear that because we don't have everybody mic'd up. The question was, if you call up Francisco Lindor, who is the big hot shortstop prospect, what happens then? Does the current shortstop move to third, and then the third baseman Lonnie Chisenhall gets his walking papers, or what? So go ahead, Paul.
Well, a couple things could happen. I think Ramirez would probably get moved to a utility infielder kind of position. And unless Chisenhall is just, hasn't played well, I think he stays at third base and Lindor would go to short. And they would, finagle the roster to make that work. They're carrying 8 or 9 relievers right now, so, you've got some wiggle room there. Or, Ramirez has options and you would send him down, but, I really like Ramirez. I think he's a good player. I like him in the number 2 spot, especially, if they have some problems running out those 3 lefties at the top of the order in Bourne, Brantley, and Kipnis. So, I think it's a good problem, but it's going to be interesting to see how they handle it.
I remember Earl Weaver, when I covered him in '79 in Baltimore, he said, somebody always gets hurt or somebody always stops hitting. And that's kind of what may happen here. I don't know about you, Paul, but I am concerned about Lonnie at third base because he did not play particularly well in spring training defensively.
Yeah, he didn't, and, he had one.
If you have 29 chances, okay, and you make 5 errors, which that's what it was in spring. So now help me, Dr. Hoynes. How's it going?
Yeah, that's not going well. And he had the one play in the Houston series that was called a hit, but it should have been an error. Yeah, the backhand play that he didn't make.
The scorer was the guy's uncle.
Yeah. So I think that's a concern, but and Ramirez has played a little third base, but he's more of a second baseman, than a third baseman.
Well, Paul, you had a little nice part in your game story. Seriously, tell everybody what Ramirez did in yesterday's game.
Yeah, Ramirez, he stole 2 bases in the first inning. He beat, the leadoff man. I think Bourne doubled. He had a bunt single to move Bourne to third. After then he steals second. He doesn't score, but a couple of bats later, he hits a home run. Then he singles later in the game. So he stole like 2 bases, scored a couple runs, hit a home run. Made all the plays at shortstop. This guy's a good player. I mean, and he gets overshadowed by Lindor, but I don't think he's a major league player right now. So. That I think if a guy keeps playing like that, you find a spot for him.
I love how educated Cleveland Indians fans are, and you guys are all examples of that here at this breakfast. But I was reading in the comments section. I know once in a while I actually dip in there on cleveland.com.
You're a brave man.
And I was reading in the comments section underneath a story about Ramirez, and it was a series of photographs of him fielding balls. And was really insightful. Some of the people that were reading it, some of our commenters said, look at this guy's form. 2 hands, squared up to the ball every time. I mean, it's, a lot of times what you see is maybe not the right fundamentals, particularly for someone young. This guy seems to just do it right.
He had 4 errors in, I think, 56 games. He took over at short. And the first time I saw him play was in 2013. They brought he and Lindor up at the end of camp to play in a couple of the spring training games when I was down there. And, of course, I knew who Lindor was. And I just remember this guy Ramirez at like 320 or something at Lake County, but I had no idea what he looked like or whatever. And, you know, he's little. But I'm watching these 2 guys play, Paul, and maybe you remember this in spring of 13, and they looked like they were AAA guys right then, right on the verge of the big leagues, because how good they were defensively. And he was playing second base, and Lindor was at short. And at that point, you could just tell, I think Lindor dropped down, Ramirez dropped down a bunt again. I mean, when you could bunt, you could steal bases, and you don't make a lot of errors at short, and you got pretty good range, you could have a long career. And the excitement over what Lindor may be, I mean, odds are Lindor's probably going to be better, but this guy's very good, so.
And he's got the great, you know, he's got that great kind of cockiness, you know. He kind of walks around, struts around the clubhouse. The veterans kind of got on him a little bit. They stole his car and put it out at shortstop during what would be the morning of one of the workouts. So on one of the practice fields, you see this BMW playing shortstop. All alone, the field is empty. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure exactly what was behind that, because I think he was parking anywhere he wanted. He ruffled somebody's feathers, but that didn't bother him.
Remember, we were sitting there, we're talking to Francona about that, and Francona goes, man, this guy's been in the big leagues half a year, and he's got a BMW. So Francona was a first-round draft pick. I forget, it was a Montreal took him or whatever. And so I said, well, what did you do with your signing bonus? He goes, I bought a Datsun.
And Ramirez says, what's a Datsun?
Yeah. Thinks it's a little dog, you know. They found it like
Pretty exotic. All right, we're going to have another question. And by the way, you're going to have to catch a ball if I ask you a question. The first thing I need to do is that man back there, I'm not going to make it, but I need a relay. So relay it to the guy back there, please.
whoa. Look at her hands.
It's a triple relay. Boy, I guess Chisenhall is involved in this play. All right, next question. You, sir, and then we'll take you, and then this side of the room, and let's not all be shy. Go ahead, sir. Sir, yes. Can you stand up and project, please? Thank you.
From watching the team, the chemistry in this clubhouse looks pretty good. Is that true?
Is the chemistry in the clubhouse good? And by the way, relay, sir, right here. Can you relay this ball? Thank you.
Ooh.
Okay, boy, I'm glad you really thought of that the last second. Relay, thank you. Go
I
ahead.
hope we have insurance.
We had two plays, 1 error. 2 plays, 1 error. We're doing great.
I think the chemistry's good. You know, it's always, I think when you find out about how a team gets along is when, not when they're winning and everything is going well. It's when, you know, you get on a losing streak, the inevitable losing streak, and people start grumbling and a little bit, and you see how the team either goes one way or the other. But I think a lot of it has to do with Francona. He's a pretty positive guy. He's a guy that keeps things loose, that's, you know, always riding around on that scooter, throwing water balloons at people, and I think that kind of permeates into the locker room.
I think what helps, too, when you have a guy like Francona, let's face it, 2 World Series rings and so on, then he comes here, takes a team that was losing 90 games 3 out of 4 years. They won 92 the first year, and he played in the big leagues. So you can't sit there as a player and say, what does this guy know? What did he ever do? The resume is fairly long, and he just has a lot of good. I mean, sometimes, you know how it is, you could put 2 teachers next to each other. This teacher, people are willing to listen to him because they think he knows what he's talking about, and this one, they have a lot of doubts, even though they're both saying the exact same things. And Francona has that cachet because of what he brings.
All right, let's have a question from this side of the room. Yes, sir, I know we can do this direct.
It's over here.
Don't throw it at me.
Wow. This
Is that as Drupal?
I thought we traded that guy, or released him.
I don't know if you think Nick Swisher is done.
Oh, boy.
No, I don't think he's done. I think
Nick
he'll be
switched to the
back.
question about is he done?
I think he'll be back end of April, early May. He's moving around pretty well now. He's been swinging a bat for like 3 months. He just can't run.
Yeah.
His knees are, he's still rehabbing his knees, but he's getting a little better. I think he'll be back. I don't know in what form or fashion. When he does come back, what are they going to do with him? Where are they going to play him? But I think he comes back. Probably early May is probably the best projection right now.
Well, one of the things to keep in mind about Swisher is if you look at his stats, say, over the last 3 years, even last year where he struggled so much, he hits better from the right side than he does from the left. Okay, right-handed hitter. I know we have so many of these with the Indians. So the fact that even if he ends up being a, quote, platoon player in some fashion, that I think will help them. And you could say, sometimes we could get stuck on, well, they're paying him $8 zillion. He's supposed to play every day, this or that. Well, at this point, you don't put his paycheck on the field. You've got to figure out what can you get out of the player. And even if he's a part-time player on a team with a bunch of left-handed hitters, and he actually could bat right-handed, hit some left-handed pitching some of the time, it's better than, it's either that or you dip down into Tyrell Holt or somebody like that. When the game, I only saw him play one game down there, his swing actually looked pretty good. But as Paul said, I'll raise him for money right now.
I wonder how you would possibly find a place for him. For example, at DH, you have that amazing platoon of David Murphy and Ryan Rayburn. How were you able to break into that?
That's the tough question. Paul, how many ground balls can you hit to the pitcher in one game? Because Rayburn was going for the record.
These guys are not going to like you. I don't have to go to the
If
clubhouse.
the guy wasn't a Gold Glove, the Keuchel.
So you thought this was a good idea?
No.
All right.
Where are you going with that?
He wasn't the only guy hitting ground balls to the pitcher, though. He was a lot.
You guys are sputtering out of control again. Let's get another question. Yes, sir. Right here. You ready?
Sure, go ahead.
Please.
Look out.
2 hands.
He didn't bring his glove. All right.
We made it.
I know you did. Thank you. Gee, just brought up Ryan Rayburn. All right, I'll ask the question. Is Francona just like the older players? And how long do you think Rayburn will be with the team before they get rid of him?
So, does Francona like older players, and how long will Rayburn be with the team? I think the answer is if he hits, he'll be with them for as long as he wants, I suppose. But what are your thoughts on his liking older players, and why does he favor people like Rayburn?
I think most managers like veterans, because hopefully they don't make as many mistakes as young guys. But on the Indians, really Francona has been not forced, but they play a lot of young guys. They have a lot of young players. But Rayburn, had a great first year, was not so good last year. And, this is the last year of his contract. They're paying him, $2.5 million. So I don't see the Dolans just cutting him loose. So I think he is a right-handed hitter. So if he has any kind of, if he doesn't have to play a whole lot better to be better than he was last year. So I think he sticks around.
So these balls just have to get past the pitcher?
Yeah. It's got to hit him like 2 feet farther.
The big thing the problem if you're Francona is, all right, I don't have Rayburn, so your right-handed kind of alternatives will be Aguilar, but they really want him to play quite a bit at first base, or Tyler Holt, or who's this other guy, Sands?
Jerry Sands.
Yeah, what about him?
He's a first baseman and a corner outfielder. I think he's more of a 4A guy. So
Yeah, he's supposed, now I was talking to Antonetti, he's supposed to be able to hit some lefties. But in other words, when you're sitting there and you make your list of alternatives, you go, well, I think I'll just go back into the Rayburn soup for a while and see maybe if something cooks up that's like it was in 2000. Because 2013, that guy was a very valuable player. And of course, it's weird. You look at his career, like 2012, he hit like 180 for the Tigers and got released. 2013, he has a very good year. 2014, he is 200. So there you go.
See how in the right field and the Progressive Field in the remake, they put a bunch of structures there so they don't have people sit in it. It seems to me, based on listening to you guys in the question, if they didn't want to fill up Progressive Field, they just keep Ryan Rayburn in the lineup, right? So you didn't have to go through all that effort. Why are we picking on Ryan Rayburn?
You brought it up to start.
I feel so horrible about it.
You started it.
I happen to like Ryan Rayburn, by the way. I'm a fan of Ryan Rayburn. Ryan, I'm a fan of yours, buddy. I don't have to go to the clubhouse, though, and you guys do. So right here, I know he can catch it, which is why I'm doing it. We'll go to 500. No, I don't want one back.
Oh, look at that.
3 for 6 now.
Is about Roberto Perez. He was a nice surprise last year. Do you see him potentially getting some more playing time, even becoming an everyday player at some position?
Well, I think I think he will get some playing time. But he's playing in back of Jan Gomes, and Gomes is, I think he'll probably could be an all-star this year. I mean, he's one of the best catchers in the game right now. So, the question is, how do you get him in the lineup? I mean, right? He had a great game yesterday, and I think the way Francona made the lineup yesterday is probably how you're going to get him in the lineup. With Gomes DHing and Perez catching, and I think you could see that in the next couple days. They're playing the Tigers. The Tigers are starting 2 lefties. So, with Gomes and Perez, you get 2 more right-handed hitters in there. And I think that's the way they get him in the lineup. He'd catching Gomes at DH.
Francona mentioned, too, with Perez, he says sometimes you have a backup catcher, and he could really catch and throw, but he hits like 180. And you go, oh, do I really want to write his name in the lineup? And that's hard to do. He said, whereas with Perez, I mean, don't know exactly how much he's going to hit, but clearly, there is some pop in the bat. So it isn't like when you write his name in the lineup and you just wince. And on top of it, Francona, along with wanting 12,000 relievers, is very into catchers who know how to catch and call games. And in fact, didn't he say the other day when we were there, Perez was born to catch? Remember that?
Yeah, he's really a good defensive catcher. He good game caller, pitch framer, all that kind of stuff. And he's got a very good arm. He threw out I don't know, 30, 40% of the runners he faced last year at Columbus.
If you're just tuning in, Zach Meisel, I think, is still in Dallas as we speak. That's why you have an open seat here if you're tuning in on cleveland.com. We'll try to cut that out of the videos we post later. Other questions? We have about 25 more minutes to go and plenty of questions to get to. Yes, sir. Please. We're going to go over 500 with this catch. Yes.
Wow. 2 hands.
We talked earlier about Chisenhall. I didn't hear much during spring training. This third baseman from Columbus is Giovanni. Urshela, I should say.
That sounds just like Giovanni.
Yeah.
Isn't there a third baseman in the system somewhere named Giovanni?
Yeah, Giovanni Urshela. Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I crossed you up. Yeah. That's not uncommon.
Did he have any signs in spring training of success?
Well, he had a great. The Indians really like this guy. He's a big guy, strong guy. Mostly he's been known as a glove man, but the last couple of years he started to swing the bat. Had a great year last year at AA and AAA. Offensively, they put him on the 40-man roster. He came to spring training, and just when he was starting to get going, he hit a home run in one of the exhibition games. Then he hurt his back, and we haven't heard from him since.
Right. In fact, he's on the disabled.
Yeah, he's on the disabled list at Columbus. But
Paul, didn't he hurt his knee or something in winter ball? Yeah.
He was hitting like 390 in Venezuela. Yes.
Yes. I think by the way, there's 2 old guys that don't know. Wait a minute, where's our prospect guy? Joe, what is he?
Hitter, yeah.
Right-handed. See,
Yeah,
Paul, why are you trying to doubt me?
Yeah. Yeah, but he's a guy. They like him, and they don't think the back injury is serious, and he's a guy that is in the picture right now.
I love that look Paul just gave. He's like right hand or left hand. He scrunches up his face.
I have a hard time with righty lefty. I can't.
I've told this story
I still
before.
mix it up.
I've told this story before, but Paul in '97, after the entire year of covering the Indians is sitting in the press box, and he's trying to make a reference for his story, and he shuts his eyes, and he turns to Bud Shaw, and he says, that body of water out there, is it an ocean or a lake? And the answer was, it's an ocean. So he begins to type, and he looks up with that vacant look on his face again, and Bud says, Atlantic. That's what happens when you cover 162 games in a season. Next question. Yes, sir.
All right.
We are doing so good now.
Catching in such good shape with Perez and Gomes. Carlos Santana's catching days for the Indians appear to be pretty much over, maybe only in an emergency. He's developed in a pretty good first baseman. And you mentioned prospects, and you mentioned two guys, and they're both first basemen. Trade possibilities here to fill some holes.
With, well, I guess behind Santana's Jesus Aguilar, first baseman. And, he's a guy that's hit home runs everywhere he's gone, except in spring training for the big league staff. And, but he had a very good spring this year. Didn't drive the ball out of the park, but, was one of the last players, was one of the 28th, 29th player, right? He came down to the last spot, came down to 3 guys, and he was one of them. So he's making some progress. I don't know if they're ready to make a trade right now, though. I don't know if Aguilar is ready to step in and play every day in the big leagues. But he certainly is, kind of a right-handed hitter. He's got power. He would fit well in the middle of the lineup. But that's not to say he's going to come in and do what Santana did last year, excluding the first 2 months of the season. Santana had 27 home runs, drove in 85 RBIs. So I don't know if they're ready to make a move in that area right now.
Remember, anybody now that could hit with power is pretty significant. Because going into yesterday afternoon, there had already been 13 shutouts in baseball. And I don't know what the number is, but there were some more last night. And when somebody hits 30 homers, it's like they used to hit 40. Basically, you almost could subtract 10 homers. Like the 30 homers is like hitting 40 in the old days, and 20 is like hitting 30. So before you do anything with Santana and throw away 27 homers, or like Moss, hits 25, you have to be careful, because if you think they're not scoring now, just wait. And Aguilar, to me, he's one of these big guys with a fairly big swing. He just needs to play quite a bit. And, and probably it's one of these guys who's going to drive some team nuts. You're going to bring him up and down, up and down. Now when he gets to be about 27, he's going to really start to hit. But if you're the Indians now, and you're on the cover of Sports Illustrated, this is not the time to trade Carlos Santana, Now, the interesting would be if, suppose the opposite of your question would be, now they're in the race. It's the end of July. Somebody wants Aguilar or something like that. Then what do you do? Because
But you don't think about that now. That's something you think about if you're in the race.
no, if you're a fan, you want to trade everybody all the time. And if you're in talk radio, you do trade everybody all the time.
We're going to have the next question. I reached down for a ball, and look what I found, a Michael Bourne signed ball instead.
Wow.
So this one's going to be, though, if you'll get your red tickets, and we're going to throw a few of these out there, too, so whoever gets this ticket gets the ball, and if you'd like to ask a question, you can do that as well. 614-259. Anybody got 259? I'll wait for you. Everyone put on your reading glasses. It's not an incredibly young crowd.
People are standing up.
Do we have it? Yes? Okay, we got a winner. Your Michael Bourne signed baseball. And you already asked a question, didn't you? All right, go ahead. Let's hear your question.
He wants a question. Hey, Kay, wait a minute. Come back here. You got to have a question. He said you have to have a question.
Or a comment or a thought? Okay, go right ahead. All right.
A lot of pressure.
I know what they were saying about the possible trades, and I just don't.
He does not have a question, ladies and gentlemen. Go ahead.
We've talked Chisenhall before. I just don't see Chisenhall at all. He had a great month or two last year, and then he didn't do anything much after that.
don't they bring Lindor up now?
Okay.
You know, they'll keep saying seasoning, and seasoning going to get hurt or something down there. Then
So-
what do you do?
Bring the young guys up. How come they don't, if you have somebody with so much talent like Lindor, why don't you just bring them up?
Well, I think that would be easier if you didn't have Ramirez sitting in front of him. So, I mean, if you didn't have kind of a major league player at shortstop, it would be easier to bring Lindor up right now. But now, and there's also, the financial part of the game comes into play. You're not going to start this guy's, put him on the path toward arbitration sooner than you want to. And by, timing it exactly, I mean, I think they bring him up in June, they get an extra year, they can get an extra year out of him before he's eligible for arbitration.
I mean, to one thing, to be really fair on one thing, if you were to look at the stats of Lindor compared to Ramirez at the different levels of the minors, Ramirez out-hit him most places. Lindor hit 276 at, I think it's in the 270s. Now, Lindor also was always one of the youngest guys in the league, but so was Ramirez. So there are some reasons there. Now, I have doubts on Chisenhall, too. Actually, I think Chisenhall might hit some, but it's a third base thing. And I sometimes wonder if he's going to end up in the outfield at some point in his career. But, Paul, I think that leaves you at third.
Oh, God.
Let's, I reached down and found another ball, TJ House signed ball.
Oh.
Is he the fourth starter in the rotation? Fifth starter?
Fourth or fifth, it keeps changing.
614-273. Who's that guy or gal? All right. There you go, sir. And do you have a question for us?
Well, question, I guess a lot of us in the room, some of us are trying to figure out the millennials, and you kind of joked about, the new stadium, and there's going to be beer there, and maybe folks pay attention to the baseball game. A lot of chatter nationally always about the game of baseball. It's slower, and obviously it doesn't probably speak to a lot of us in the room because we're passionate baseball people. Where do you see baseball in the next 20 years? With the new growth of the millennials coming up, does it have enough action for them? Is that something for the national guys to say, or are we going to see a strong fan sport in the next 20 years?
That's an excellent question. Where is baseball going in the next 20 years? And you talked about the slowness of the game. There's now essentially a shot clock on between innings. It's 2.5 minutes, I think.
Well,
220.
220.
So you've got it. You can't dilly-dally. And I think they showed that games so far, these first couple of games, have been incredibly fast compared to that opening day the year before, just because of taking out that extra air in between innings. That's one effort. But what about that? The speed of the game and the future of the game.
Well, the pace of play is I don't care about the pace of play. I really don't. I mean, it's a big thing for Major League Baseball. They think this game is too slow, that it's losing, that it's not attracting younger fans, that the average game was, I think, 3 hours and 12 minutes last year. So they've made some changes to speed it up, and they tried it in spring training. And to be honest, they had the clock, the time between the half innings in spring training, and nobody paid attention to it. The umpires didn't pay attention to it, and the players didn't pay attention to it.
Although, Paul, I will counter with this. Don't you think it's a better played game when the batter doesn't have to step out after every pitch and, keep changing all this? Because I just think in fact, Hamilton, you unless you happen to be listening to your radio while you were also covering the game, while you were trying to figure out how you get back so you could hear in time, about the third inning when Trevor Bauer was, walking everybody, whatever, Hamilton said, this reminds me of some of my son's Little League games when the outfielders would be out there and they put gloves on their head and start picking dandelions. My co-author is not afraid to speak his mind. But I do think, I get you on the pace, but I also just think, tell these guys, no, you're in the batter's box. Stay in there.
And that's the one thing where it has changed, you could see in spring training, and you have seen in the first 3 games of the season. You're supposed to keep a foot in the batter's box, and they have done that. You don't see many guys strolling around and, taking a deep breath. They stay in the box, and in that regard, the game is sped up. But, everyone is speaking of the demise of baseball. Baseball made $8 billion last year. It's an $8 billion industry. This is a very, very healthy industry. And I think, it is going to continue that way. Does it have to make some changes? Sure, and I think that, Rob Manfred, the new commissioner, is certainly been willing to talk about all of them, much more so than Bud Selig, his predecessor. But, it's a game that I think is, it's a game you could have, you can still recognize it from the 1900s, and that's a good thing in regards to just the play on the field. But, it has to change, and it will change. I think it's going to stay healthy. I really do.
One of the things, too, is if you were to go back and look at the Indians, and a lot of teams say in the 60s or 70s in their attendance, if you drew 1 million fans, that was considered good. That used to be the goal. I mean, now 1.4 million, and the Indians are 29th out of 30. So for all the talk about the decline there, secondly, the big money baseball makes is cable television. That was the big change from the 90s, was the ballpark to cable TV, because, Mr. McIntyre, being the media maven that you are.
Maven.
You are a media maven. I mean, look, you do stand-up, as you are right now, you're standing up.
I see.
And you have your own radio show and all that. But in any given evening in the summer, in most big league markets, the highest rated TV show is the baseball game. That's why, whether it's not so much in Cleveland, because the Indians span doesn't go that far, because you got Pittsburgh over here, and you have Cincinnati down there, and you have Detroit up there. But say you're in Kansas City, or, for example, I tend to vacation not in Michigan, we call it the UP, Upper Peninsula, over the bridge, and like up towards Marquette, that's like 8 hours from Detroit. They have the Tiger games on up there, that far. So in other words, these cable TV contracts become very big for a lot of, like those Red Sox are all over New England. And so that's the other thing that's interesting to me, is the TV ratings are high. The Indians had per capita the 5th highest television ratings among Major League Baseball teams. In fact, Paul Dolan, one of the things, part of the reason you have the corner bar and all that, trying to figure out how to get them away from the TV set into the ballpark, even if we got to give them a big TV set to watch it while you're in the ballpark.
All right. More questions. We have about 10 minutes or so to go. We are going to get you out of here right at 9 o'clock. We're going to start with this lady right here and this gentleman. First, you have
Aren't you going to give her a ball?
This is easy.
You don't catch it.
I'm promising
Don't
you.
sound like one of the Indians. Don't hit it to me. You got it. She got it.
Nice one.
Along the same lines with the millennials, don't you think it's our responsibility to bring our children up, our grandchildren up, loving baseball?
Yes.
I mean, I think it is our responsibility. My son is going to be 34. He unfortunately now lives in California.
But you're only 41. Adopted.
But, when the Indians are in playing the Angels, he's there. And when they played the Dodgers a couple of years ago, he's there. He can still, I'm impressed with all the stats, He knows all the stats from the time he was growing up. I don't know, but I think it's our responsibility to bring these young ones up.
I hear you have a Willoughby accent there, too. Yeah, it is the golden rule, right? Do unto others as they're doing. Teach your kids. Do unto others as doing
Well, I mean,
you.
listen,
Also,
this
don't
way-
hold Kenny Lofton at third base. There are things
Right.
you have to teach your kids.
And on a little more serious level, you could do a lot worse than taking your kid to a ball game.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the remarkable thing when I do think about the times that my dad took me to the Indians, and it was primarily in the 60s, they weren't any good. And you know it. And if somebody in your family took you to the Indians in the 70s, they weren't any good. And if they took you to the games in the 80s, we could have, as they say, I go to primarily a black church. We could have church in here now, we can kind of go back and forth. It really wasn't. In fact, there's this weird group of Indians fans that kind of came to the team between like 94 and 2001, and they were good, and they just can't figure out what happened. We know what happened. In fact, part of the family connection, Dr. Hoynes, would you not say, is that the fact we went to the teams and they were terrible and we suffered together.
No. Yeah, I think my kids are baseball fans. They had no choice, because I was gone all the time. They had, but they, and they still are, and I'm surprised that they still are. You know, I'm just surprised how much they still like the game. And I, like Terry, I remember going to the ballpark, the old stadium, like watching Rocky Colavito with my dad and stuff, and going down there as kids. And I think you're right. You know, you have to talk about it. You can't be all soccer. It can't be all football. It can't be all sports that go 100 miles an hour.
Lacrosse now.
Yeah, everything. It's still you've got to you know. And I think it's a good game.
It's like when I speak sometimes, it's like I have to admit that you talk about irrational love is the Browns. It's for the Browns. It just is. I mean, you know, for all this, I mean, if the Indians were the Browns, that means in 2013 the Indians were 9-7 and made the playoffs and lost a game. In 2014, again, they were still 9-7, only they missed the playoffs. They'd be building statues for the team and the players. Instead, we always hear one thing: the Dolans are cheap. I mean, it's kind of, now you could argue that, but it's like there's this strange narrative. The Indians are held to this one standard over here, and then we have, you know, kind of the folks in the orange helmets over there, and oh, I'm just so glad they're on the field.
If the Indians were the Browns, the red on that logo would be just a little bit more red this year. A little bit more red. Yes, sir.
I love that.
Last year, Francona wins the bullpen more than any other manager in baseball. What are your thoughts on that?
Paul, you wrote an epic on this.
You know, I think that if you look at it, how he's managed before he got to Cleveland, you know, that they had never done that before. You know, he had great starting rotations in Boston. He had bad teams in Philadelphia. Philadelphia, I think they used their bullpen, made 440 appearances. Here they made, what, 523, 524 appearances. Set the American League record the last 2 years. I think that they just, like all managers, you play to the strengths of your club. They have a lot of talented relievers. They were short on starting pitching, and I think, you know, that's why he did it. So I think that was a plan, but I don't think he's like some mad scientist there. But he does like relievers. So, I mean, they've got 8 on the team right now, 9 if you count McAllister, who's starting today, and then is going into the bullpen. So I think that's the way he is able to best take advantage of the talent of the club.
To me, one of the biggest jokes is the end of spring training where you had 2 position players and a pitcher. Which one's going to make the team? Oh, come on. This is a guy, remember in September 2013, he had 15 or 16 pitchers. They had him sitting on the roof of the bullpen. They didn't know where to put them all. So, I mean, you know, it's kind of like, you know, you can never have enough pitching. The interesting thing for those people kind of looking at the game and why is the hitting suffering so much. Yeah, these guys don't seem to care about strikeouts and some other things, but now they take these pitchers in the minor leagues and they'll throw them in the bullpen a lot quicker than in the past. And because you could vault through the minors, what I say is having a pitch and a half. In other words, you throw really hard or you have a really good slider and you have sort of another pitch. And they could just get you to the big leagues, and suddenly it just seems, and they tell these guys, throw as hard as you can for like 4 guys. And if you're left-handed, your whole world is getting out one batter. Think about that. I mean, I remember when Ossenmacher was with the team, he was always sleeping on the couch in the clubhouse. He's just waiting to get woken up to get out as one batter, and he went back to bed.
Paul Ossenmacher had the greatest kind of belief. He said, I'm going to start slow and taper off from opening day on. That was his philosophy.
You're right about that, though. Zubchinski in the second game, 1 pitch, and he's a hero.
He's
Double
done.
play and you're done.
Right, you know,
Take a
just
shot.
there he is.
But like Terry was saying, Cody Allen and Kyle Crockett, you know, Crockett was drafted in 2013?
Yeah, he's
Or 14, in 2014, and he's up. In 2013, he's in the big leagues, and Cody Allen went through 5 levels in 1 year almost.
I think Kyle Crockett's 12.
Yeah.
Look how young he looks. I mean,
12, yeah.
seriously. But he's got that slider. He throws strikes. And he's going to pitch 147 years in the big leagues. Because, you know, lefties do.
Well, a real quick point. We have about 5 minutes left, a little less than 5 minutes left. I have a bunch of prizes. I'm not going to waste time with the drawing of tickets. So hang around. We'll end our broadcast around 9. Then we're going to give away a bunch of prizes. So don't get up and leave when we say goodbye here. But let's finish this out with some questions. We're going to start. Bonnie, what?
Just one thing. I know we have some birthdays today.
I've got that. You stop it.
More than the one I gave.
Okay, all right. We got to get to this question, and I'll do yours.
Terry-Pluto's books. We got lots.
Okay. Go ahead, sir. Ready?
Yeah, ready.
Oh, what you did.
Right, let's get it again. Let's get it again. Come on, we got to get this right. Ready?
Underhand.
You can keep that.
All right.
My question is your thoughts on the hot and cold streaks that baseball players have. Some are remarkably consistent, and then you have Chisenhall at third base.
For Chisenhall.
And then
Carlos
you have a
and Rayburn.
Fastball pitcher called Hagedorn. Is there a reason for that you can think of?
All right, what about the hot and cold? And we'll answer that question. Let's let our panel answer it, sir, unless you want to take that other seat. Okay, we're good.
You know, I think that's just the nature of the game. But you know, you play 162 games. You play. You know, you're playing well for 10 games. Then you go into a slump. I think that's just natural. But with Hagedorn, it's interesting. He was almost perfect in spring training. He walked one guy and gave up one hit and nothing else. And now you see the difference between spring training games and the regular season. I think you could tell the adrenaline starts kicking in, and all of a sudden, all the good things he was doing in spring training, he's trying a little bit extra, trying a little extra, and whatever he had locked in spring training, it's not there right now. So
I think anybody in any profession knows there are times when, my biggest enemy is me, and whether you're in sales or whatever it may be, suddenly I just can't do anything right. And then when you have a day or two you can't do anything right, then you show up to work the next day and go, man, I hope it's a day where I could finally do something right. And I just think for example, if a basketball player only shot 30%, he's not going to last. If a quarterback, even in Cleveland, only completed 30% of his passes.
And they do.
But not for long. There's a new one coming right behind him. But I think you get the point. He's just immediately gone. And in baseball, 30%, in other words, you get a hit 30% of the time. So you're actually on still like a general, almost in any other business where you're only successful 30% of the time, you're not in business long. Here you're a success. And then if you're like 22%, again, in other words, I think you have to slog through more failure to be a success in baseball than the other sports, and it just wears on you mentally.
what Yogi say? 90% of this game is 50% mental, or something like that. So I think that's part of it. It's all up in your head. That's why all these teams have mental skills coaches and psychologists. They're always talking to them. And
Psychotics?
Well, I don't know, but that's it really plays with your head. It really does. It's because it's every day. You can't get away from it once the season starts.
And again, you just fail more in baseball than other sports.
All right, I promised we'd say some happy birthdays, and I really appreciate that folks think this is a great idea to celebrate your birthday or get a birthday gift for a friend by coming to this event. Judy Adam, are you here? Your birthday is today? Is Judy here? I was told to say happy birthday to a person who's not here. Oh, Judy, I'm sorry.
Oh, there she is.
Stand right up, Judy. Happy birthday to you. Come on. Happy birthday, Judy. And Bonnie, is there somebody else I'm supposed to acknowledge?
Hey, Judy.
Who?
Look what you got.
Lauren, yeah, happy birthday to Lauren. Lauren, you're going to get a book from Terry-Pluto as well.
I am?
And Josie, and it's her birthday as well. Happy birthday, everybody. If you're watching today, and is it your birthday too, sir? Okay. Actually, we're going to have to wrap up the question part of the program because we said we'd do an hour. We're saying goodbye to our streaming audience at this time. Thank you very much. If it's your birthday, happy birthday to you as well. And finally, we're going to end with our predictions for the Cleveland Indians. They're going to go 161-1. Is that the?
Exactly.
So do the Indians make it to winning a division or a league?
I have them creeping into the playoffs with 87 wins. But what do I know?
I don't know. I picked them for third and not getting into the postseason. So.
Well, how many wins did you have?
I had 87 around in there.
If they win that many games, they're not going to be third.
Well, they might, you know.
No.
All right, you know what, Brian's prediction at the beginning is looking a lot better.
Yeah.
And we're going to end it with that. Folks, thanks so much for coming to Talkin' Tribe today.